Hey, experts listeners. I want to key you into something that we do very special here at Ops Experts Club, and that's a masterclass. We have a free masterclass called Foundations That Scale. And the great thing about this masterclass is it's for operation professionals who are growing businesses. One of the most dangerous things you can do as an operator is grow businesses on a foundations that's not stable. So in this particular masterclass, we take apart all of the inside pieces of your team, your tech, and how they're using time. And we make sure that you're building on a foundation that's stable. So if you want to check out a great masterclass completely for free, go to foundationsthatscale.com. We'll see you there.
Welcome to the Ops Experts Club with Aaron, Taryn, and Savannah. This podcast will take you behind the scenes of some of the finer details of multi-million-dollar companies. These ops experts have dealt with operations for scaling companies and well-established businesses with anywhere from small to large teams. If you've ever been deep into the details of a major company, then you know how much it takes, and these conversations are just for you. Welcome to the Ops Experts Club podcast.
So welcome to Ops Experts Club. Good to see everybody for Ops Experts. Usually you're used to seeing Taryn's face. Usually you're used to seeing Savannah's face. And you're like, what the heck? What is Aaron and Drew doing here? So for those of you tuning in today, all the leadership team for Collab team decided to take the same vacation week, which has been super rad for me. I'm like, oh, awesome. So everybody's duties just fell onto Aaron. And I'm like, call up the boys, bring up the secondaries. So I know Drew's been sitting on a lot of L10 meetings with us this week, has been playing a lot of roles for things he's like, I've never done that before. Yeah, throw that my direction. Let's see how that goes. And I think it's been rad just to see the whole team at Collab team really stretch. You know, you have a team of 15, and when you lose 3 of your top players, it's cool just to see, hey, it's an opportunity for next level folks to rise up. And Drew's next level folks and is really making amazing progress with the Collab team the last couple of years. So Drew, thanks for joining me today on Ops Experts Club, man.
Thanks for having me. I always try to tell people about the secret A string you're finally bringing into the field. They're holding back on them the whole. So now they get the real talent.
We're elevating it. I love it. Anyway, hey, today we're talking about something pretty cool, something that I feel like a lot of people really struggle with, and that is hiring and recruiting. And when it comes to hiring and recruiting, there can be a lot of stress because you're bringing a new player on the field, and not only you bring a new player on the field, but you have to go find that new player first. And a lot of times you're always just like, man, we're so overburdened. We just need to do hiring. And then you finally get to the point where you've got enough guts or you've talked your boss into getting the hire in the door. And then that's where the real fun starts, right? Because then you've got to go and find the person, right? And then you spend all that time vetting candidates, all that time interviewing people, only to then have to onboard people. And then that's where the real lift comes, you know? So Collab team comes alongside of all of our clients and we help with that process. We come in and we, hold space, put them through the gap analyzer, identify where there are gaps on the team. I'll shove people from my team into their team to hold that space where there is a gap. And then we'll go and recruit and we'll find people and we'll do all the recruiting, all the vetting of the applicants that come in. And then we'll do all the interviewing and we'll raise up to secondary interviews and then we'll help with the secondary interviews. And then we'll help with the hiring process and the onboarding process and backfilling that space that we've been filling in the gap. So today I thought I'd bring on the show, not only does Drew do a bunch of recruiting for the Collab team, but also the guest we have on today is a super big badass. I think that she's an amazing lady, lots of respect for her. She's been an EA for one of the biggest names that we've worked with, Pedro Adeo, but also she's gone on to do really powerful things. And she does a ton of recruiting for the Collab team, especially EAs and ops driven roles. So with no further ado, I'd love to welcome in Miss Catherine Shue.
Hi, you just make me blush up here.
Yeah, right. I love it. That's my whole goal is to make our guests blush. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kat.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I baited Kat into the Collab team knowing, she had moved on from Pedro Adeo's organization and gone out and done her own things and doing some things within other businesses, other places. And I'm like, hey, EAs, and the role of an EA and the role of an EA of a really hard visionary to follow. Pedro is one of the hardest guys to follow when it comes to being an EA. There's no way around that. He's just moves like a hurricane. And so then to try and keep up with that is really tough for the job as an EA. So then as I started getting into this role of more and more of our clients needing us to recruit for EAs, I was doing a lot of the recruiting. I was passing that on to different people on the team doing it. And we were starting to get overloaded bandwidth wise. And I thought, what am I dumb? Let's reach out to Kat. Let's see if she'd be willing to come alongside of us and help us with recruiting, because not only does she know this role really well, but she can sniff out people that just are not going to work. There are a lot of people on paper that look like they've done it, that look like they've done a great job doing it, but maybe it's been in an ultra corporate setting, where it's like, big boardrooms, everybody's got offices. She sits at a front desk, but so few in our entrepreneurial space is that even remotely close to what they're up against. For a lot of these folks, it's remote work. Other folks, it's remote with hybrid work. But even when they come into the office, maybe they have desk in the corner of the CEO's office, or maybe, if they get a desk, I think that there's a lot of different things when it comes to online entrepreneur space, especially. So Kat, I just think you do this job great. You've helped us vet, you know, a lot of jobs for a lot of people at this point. You've looked at hundreds and hundreds of applicants for different people in the space. So I'm excited just to hear some of your wisdom, some of your brilliance this afternoon.
Yeah.
You're like, great. I wonder what he's going to ask us next. So the whole purpose of Ops Experts Club is to extract wisdom and knowledge out of you, and to ask you questions and let you just answer. So no pressure. We just like hearing from you because we know you've done it a lot. So Drew, are there any things that come to mind? I know you've kicked off a lot of recruiting projects. I know you've been in the middle of a lot of interviews. I know you've been through the battle testing of vetting folks and then escalating people up to second tier. What are some of the things that come top of mind and things that you would want to like? What are some good things we could get Kat talking about?
Well, I mean, you mentioned that I'd done a lot of recruiting and hiring, but much recruiting and hiring as I've done, I've passed the ball off to Catherine. Some things that I can't quite handle myself, though. Singing all praises to her as well. She's very talented. So I think for me personally, sometimes where I'm struggling or where I, basically ask the audience, we have a little recruiting chat that we go to. Things like, first pass or how to set up certain key questions within LinkedIn and how to use the algorithms properly. And are there some, key things that you look for as far as, when you take a first pass through we set up automations within LinkedIn to do fit, not a fit, maybe those types of things. But visually, sometimes we go dig through the not a fits and we find, little nuggets and treasures of people that get washed out to the side sometimes. Do you have like a technique that you use to look at maybe through resumes or through their LinkedIn profile or some awards that they've earned, or the things that you look for specifically?
Yeah. So when posting myself, because previously David or someone else was posting for me, and I recently started posting myself, I was looking through all of the ways to filter people out, and to be honest, I didn't really like them. I don't trust the LinkedIn algorithms to weed people out for me because, you're looking for something very specific. So I tend to honestly read through every single resume that comes across my computer screen and just looking for keywords such as, detail oriented or highly organized, things like that, because being an EA, you have to have those skill set. So when I go through, it's, what kind of EA were they? Was it in the healthcare industry? What am I hiring for? Things like that. Mainly what I look at first. Also, how long they've been in a position. A lot of people have been in a position for, a year and then they move on, or, 3 years, 5 years. So that definitely is something that I look at first when, vetting.
Yeah. So we use Voxer a lot on the Collab team, and we'll create different channels, and so Kat and I have a bunch of sideline conversations. And so usually I'll set her up and I'll say, hey, so this is your visionary, because there are different kinds of visionaries out there, right? There are some people that like the Pedros, like the Pete Vargases of the world, even that like move super high, like hurricane, and then there are other ones that are more, no. They want to really stay in their lane, and this is their lane, and this is what they want to do. And they want to entrust somebody else just to run the majority of the other underlying things, So I think that how much of that do you feel like comes into play when it comes to conversations around what kind of applicants am I looking for? Do you feel like, hey, what kind of visionary are they working with? What's the business environment they're going to be in the middle of? I know those are some of the questions you always ask me, right? Like maybe some of those questions.
Yeah.
What are some of the ones that come top of mind when you're thinking through candidates?
Honestly, when I message you, it's what are they looking for?
Yeah.
First of all, like what kind of EA are they looking for? But I also ask you, what do they actually need?
Right.
Because sometimes they might be looking for, someone who's a bulldog and will just go in and get it, but they need someone who will also take a step back, but they don't know that. So a lot of the times, Aaron, you have a different perspective of, you've worked with them, you know them on a personal and business level. So what do you think that they need to help them succeed? And that's definitely something that I can look for in the resumes as well. But yeah, I take
Yeah.
that into consideration significantly because it is very important to know exactly who I'm hiring for and, what they need, because everyone's different. Everyone needs something different, and everyone brings something different to the table as far as an EA goes. So you have to make sure that you just get the right fit. So that way, the position is filled for a longer period of time.
Yeah. And I think too, something that I think that I found in trying to recruit EAs for CEOs, especially, but even like we do a lot of ops manager recruiting, we do a lot of
Mhm.
finance managing recruiting, we do a lot of like operations based roles. People will come to us and ask for help with those things. I know both of you guys have done quite a bit of that kind of recruiting as well. I think identifying what's the pain point, because I think that there are a lot of times as people are going to hire, usually either we're hiring somebody new, right? This position's been filled before. So, hey, where did that last person fail? Let's get really clear on what kinds of things do they not want to happen again? And Kat, I mean, you nailed it on the head already pretty clearly. And that is high attention to detail. You're taking notes, you follow through well. If you don't do those two things, like you pretty much shouldn't be doing EA work because it's not glorious work. It's not the most glorious thing, but if you like tracking details, if you like chasing down like answers on things, if you like being, empowered to go and make decisions, and there are a lot of things that CEOs, just ladies or guys in that top level seat, just don't want to be looking at, and they shouldn't be. It's that's below what they should be attention to detail on. So what they need is a quick start is, hey, I'm going to put this on first base, and I need to trust, Kat, that you or whoever we're recruiting behind, would be able to take it from here and move it forward. And so I think that the best CEOs that I know, the best visionaries I know, are the ones that empower their EA to really act on their behalf once they've proven themselves to be able to hold a space. So I think that all those things are really key, but really identifying what is the highest point of burn, like where are you feeling the most pain, And so I know for Steve Harward, when we recruited for him for Prime, we found his EA, and Eliza is amazing. We've interviewed her here on the show. Steve does so much with affiliate partners. Like so much of their business is working with partners. So Steve was so under the weight, of so many partners. We had to create really this sequence of ways that Eliza could help manage some of the load, some of the lift of all that partner communication and all those partner meetings and all those partner follow-ups. And it wasn't necessarily her job to be an affiliate manager or a partner manager, but there was a big part of her job that became kind of that first base. Steve's making the contact. Second base, Eliza takes it on, passes it on to the people that need to be. And, we talked about breaking it up into buckets of like highest level, people, there's a lot of traction, mid-level and low level, and who should be dealing with Steve and kind of being that gatekeeper too of not everybody probably needs to make it to Steve just because we get somebody that approaches us on a partnership. But in a scenario like that, it's like, is that EA work? Probably not really, but it is a big need for the CEO. And if an EA can come in, an executive assistant can come in and really meet that need, I really see a lot of potential for EAs even to move up with an organization, which I believe is like the biggest success story is when a visionary can recognize this person has talent. We're going to commit these things to him or her, that are maybe trial opportunities. And as they own those well, the EA is able to move up into maybe becoming like an operations manager or a director of ops, even like a COO at some point, maybe. I think that's the ideal ascension is if you can keep that culture. She's got your culture. Who's got the culture better than this guy or this gal that's worked as your EA? Like invest in them. You want to talk to that just a little bit, Kat? Like investing in people and hope for longevity?
Yeah. So, going back to one of the things that I said is when I'm vetting, I definitely look at how long people have stayed in a job because that says
Yeah.
something about them. Because if you tend to job hop, you don't see the value in staying with a specific company because there is, obviously the opportunity to move up in the company. And as the EA, no one knows the company better than you. You
Mhm.
are the ins and outs. You are the go-to. You are the person you essentially are the company because you are supporting that C-level executive. So
Yeah.
being the EA and watching people just job hop, it's interesting because it's like I would want to stay in a company and progress and become the operations manager or, director of operations and definitely move up because you have the skill set and knowing the company and the ins and outs. I mean, I feel like you're just setting yourself up for success and, a career.
Yeah.
Something interesting that I found, we've been doing recruiting for a few years now consistently, but recently in the last, I don't know, year or so, a lot of the answers that people give me are around that exact thing. The money is important sure, but I want to be in a place that is the company will have an impact on the community or, wherever it is placed, and then where I can have an impact and purposeful and where there's longevity and where I can grow. So, looking at people's resumes and then asking, I mean, I've gotten into a room with people where I ask that exact question. I'm like, like, looks like you've had, there's quite a few jobs and a lot of experience, and I'm sure you developed a lot of skills. Is there a reason that you're bouncing around so much? And some of their answers do revolve around company culture. I think it's important also because if they're not understanding the culture, they're not going to be a good fit, and that's why they bounce around. So finding a culture that matches the EA is just as important as finding an EA that's going to match your culture. You can't they're not just going to fit like puzzle pieces. They're not like water, it's not going to change shape. A lot of people have their hardwiring. So I'm wondering around like if there's a lot of, what types of red flags that you look for or see. I mean, we have a pretty robust process now of how we do recruiting and hiring, and the communication between us and the potential interviewee before we get them to the table. Are there things that you look for during the communication process, or are either like, oh, this is a huge bonus?
As far as communication goes, I definitely look at their attention to detail because I ask them questions, and it's how they answer those questions that I really try and like pay attention to, because even a simple question like, oh, like, where are you located? They don't
Mhm.
really tell you. Okay. But so I when I ask them and I'm communicating with them and I'm asking them questions, it's how are they answering my questions? Are they paying attention
Yeah.
to exact what I'm asking them? Because if they can't answer my question, how are they supposed to answer the CEO's questions or the CFO or whoever they're supporting? And it's really that attention to detail that I pay attention to in the beginning as far as communication goes.
Drew, I think I know where you're going with this because I think you and I had a conversation about this just the other day on a recruiting project you're in the middle of. I feel like sometimes Drew can be sneaky about it, where he'll actually bait them into something and I'll ask them something to determine, have they been paying attention? Like, did they read this job post? Have they gone to
Yeah.
the website? You know what I mean? Because I think that we're not just looking for any old body to fill a seat, and I think that, we don't always post pay. It depends on how many people we're trying to get in, right? So if we're having a hard time filling a role, sometimes we'll pull pay just to see how many people we can, get in on first batch of, like, let's vet through a bunch of candidates to get to our right person. Other times we'll really use pay to really tighten down the bolts. You know what I mean? I know Drew, you're on a project lately or recently where the people coming in and applying were just way too high of a caliber. And even though the title was really clear, like, this isn't a C-suite level, like, you were getting a lot of C-suite applicants with C-suite pay expectations. So we ratcheted it down by affecting the pay grade. But you said even after that, right? Like, it was clear people were still wanting to have pay conversations where you're like, hey, so I feel like you applied to this role and we're pretty clear what the pay range is. And that's something we do at the Collab team where we'll go and do market analysis. Like, we'll go and, pull all the stats and go on to all the glass doors and salary.coms and, all the different zip recruiters that are out there. And we'll pull industry standard. And then from our database, we'll go off of, hey, so this is what we've seen people hire this role for. So then when we put a number in, we're not just throwing out a nebulous number. We're not just like some random number we're throwing out there. It's like, no, we know what they pay for in Dallas, Fort Worth. You know what I mean? So if you're coming here and you're not paying attention to what we've posted, probably a red flag, like Kat, you were saying, like, they're not paying attention to, like, you have to be local or or it's okay to be hybrid or pay, on this. Maybe Drew, you want to speak to that a little bit? I know you've kicked over a couple of those stones lately.
Well, I just think it's interesting to, like, if I'm going to be applying to a job, unless I'm mass applying to just a generic form of employment, I want to know what the company is. I want to know what the company does. I want to read that job description inside and out and make sure that I'm going to be a fit because I want to be happy. After I send a long message and I'm like, hey, send me a specific response when you've read it. And some people who just send you a thumbs up, they obviously didn't read it. And so it's like that attention to detail is very important. And a lot of people don't necessarily, it's like, I don't know if you guys got the forms in school or anything where it says, read everything before you start answering questions. And at the very end, it's don't answer any of the questions.
Right.
And people are already halfway through the worksheet. Those little fun things that are going to affect their workflow. And it is a huge tell. I completely agree.
Usually I'd prep guests with is like a great success, maybe something that you've taught or learned or something that you feel like has been a good thing that you've come across that has just been a great experience for you in recruiting, maybe a good story or like a bad story. One of them that you're like, that was an awful experience. And I I don't know if anything like that comes to mind that you want to share that you're like, hey, so this was something that I felt like was a good learning experience for me one way or the other.
Awful experiences. I've had quite a few. I'm not gonna lie. And that's just interviews in particular are hard. And I feel like I like to do phone call interviews as the initial interview just because it takes the pressure off of it because you're not like staring someone in the face. But I've had some pretty interesting conversations with people, and I've just noticed that if they are driving, the interview's not gonna work.
Yeah,
I've had
that's a
quite a
good
few
one.
people. Yeah, if they're driving home from work, and I understand, like, sometimes my time is limited on my calendar, so they're just kinda taking what they can get, but if they're driving, it's getting to the point where, like, some of the conversations are not the greatest, and I feel bad because, that person has an amazing resume and, they wanna have that, good conversation, but they're just not getting there because 'cause they're focusing on something else. It's to the point where I now ask people like, "Hey, you're driving, like, when are you gonna be home? Can I accommodate a different time for you?" Just because that experience of driving and trying to conduct an interview and
Very,
having people answer questions, it's not good. So it's just one pretty bad experience. I had one girl recently who was driving home and she kept losing service.
yeah.
The call kept dropping. So I was
The
like,
things you don't want, right? Like, how serious are you exactly about this job, right? Like, do you want this job? Do you not want this job? And I think that we live in a day and age where so much is so convenient. You know what I mean? So we think we can pretty much do anything virtual, but like anybody listening on this call that's applying for a job, make some time to talk to somebody. Like, make some time to slow down.
yeah,
Don't try and be multitasking during your interview. But where I thought you were going to go with it, that I think is equally true, is be careful of people who start driving the conversation in the interview too. I know Drew, you and
that
I have
too.
had several conversations about that, like where you can tell, no, 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 this is scripted. They're not listening to your questions. They're just looking for a monologue opportunity where it's like they're going to tell you all the things they did and they're going to walk you through it all because
Mhm.
they think that impressed you. But it's like, no, no, no. I read your resume. I know what you can do. I need to know that you're going to fit my role that I'm trying to hire for. And so I think people that start trying to even drive it that way, where it's like there have been interviews that I've been on, I know you guys have too, where you lose complete control of the rein. You're like, that was like a half hour monologue. I mean, that guy just talked to me for a half hour. I didn't even get three of my questions in. So I think that being aware of that too.
Yeah, I always start off an interview by, like, having them tell me a little bit about themselves because I wanna hear what they're gonna say before I start asking them questions. And there are the few people who do run down their entire resume for 15 to 20 minutes, and I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
I did read it. I just wanted you to tell me, like, just a little bit about yourself." And
Yeah.
they tend to take over the conversation, and I'm like, "Okay, well, working for, this type of executive, if you're constantly in there talking, 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 that's probably not gonna work."
That's good. Drew, you too, right? I know that you and I had some funny conversations about people you've passed on. You're like, hey, man, I think this guy might be a second interview worthy, but honestly, he was a little bit chatty and kind of took over.
Yeah, I mean, and they're super nice people, but obviously that's not always the most social role, So if they're looking for a role where you're gonna be socializing all the time, it's gonna be lacking. Then some of those positions, and we know what positions are gonna be social, and we know what positions are probably not going to be like, completely socializing with the whole office all the time. And some people, really give off that energy, and like you said, we'll just talk you through the resume, and then things that are just completely off topic. And like, I get that it's nice to see a friendly face because, of course, we're friendly faces when we go in an interview, we're smiling, we're asking that question. And some people might not get that opportunity to talk about themselves very often, but yeah, they will drive the conversation to some odd places occasionally.
Yeah. I think overall, big picture, I think that, for us at the Collab team, the way it works is we take on a recruiting project, we'll put it out there, we'll get all these applicants back. Kat or Drew or others on our team will vet them, have that first level interview, and then they'll escalate them up to me if it's an ABC candidate. You know what I mean? Are they a high level candidate? Are they a mid level candidate? Or are they just not probably one that should be considered? I'll do second interview with second candidates, usually with the hiring manager. And I think that that's at that point, and when I get into that point, it's a lot. Hey, tell me a little about. Let's just break it down. Let's have some human moments. You made it to second interview, man. Well done. Kat really liked you. Drew really liked you. Great job. Tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about you. Like, where do you live? Like, you single? Do you have kids? Are you married? Like, what do you enjoy doing for fun? Like, let's just break down some of the normal jargon because people out of the can want to start talking about this is a job opportunity. I want this job. So I think really breaking it down to a human moment, but then really leaning in with some strategic questions around the rules. Usually I'll frame up, expectations from the role. This is what the role is going to be. Does that seem like something that aligns with you? How do you feel like you've aligned with things like that in the past? And really letting them speak to day-to-day operations, day-to-day fits. I think that's really helped me. But I really like what we do with recruiting at the Collab team. We don't do it for everybody. We just do it for a high level retainer client, and it really is for the sake of seeding somebody into a position that we've already been holding anyway. And that way we've been the resident expert holding that space for our client. And as we hire them in, because onboarding is the most difficult part, I think, even more than hiring, is getting that people caught up to speed, getting them then to take over those roles. And so I really like what we do. I feel like we do something pretty unique. And Kat, you and Drew both feel a rad spot for that for the Collab team. So just lots of thanks to you for the way you show up for our clients. And I think that it always makes me so happy just when we finally seat one of the people that we vetted, and then I get to have conversations with them downstream and they're working out so well. And I just think there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into that. There was a lot of phone call, a lot of FaceTime. We'll always have our candidates send in a short little 1 or 2 minute clip so that we can pass that on to the hiring manager of just look like somebody that has the right personality. And I just think all of those little touches, I think, make things so special. So thanks you two for all the energy you put into that. Kat, thanks so much for joining us on Ops Experts Club today, sister. It was so good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
So Drew, thanks for hanging out too, man. You're our step in for Taryn Turner. You did a great Taryn Turner impersonation today. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I should have worn my glasses. Would have made it all better.
You should have. And your turtleneck sweater. That would have been awesome. All righty, guys. Have a great day. Thanks for hanging out for Ops Experts Club. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ops Experts Club podcast. New episodes available every week on Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you're curious about how some of the biggest names in entrepreneurship have scaled their businesses to the next level, check out some of our best content on this topic by going to foundationsthatscale.com. You can find the link in our bio and do your part to improve as an ops expert.